Welcome to the wonderful world of dance, bringing you exclusive interviews with top dancers and choreographers and reviews of the world's best companies across the globe. You can find lots more on our website at thewonderfulworldofdance.com.
Hi, this is Savannah Saunders from The Wonderful World of Dance, and today we're discussing the exploration of the gender spectrum with a new premiere called Other Voices, which is being presented by Nashville Ballet as part of their annual Attitude platform. Other Voices brings together 4 renowned choreographers.
I think I knew at a really young age that was the only thing that I wanted to do. I was choreographing and making dances and improvising in my home as a child, in the living room, bouncing off furniture. So it was just something that was kind of ingrained. I was definitely born with it. And I've always danced as a career. I worked at a bank when I was really young, and I could just, that's just not going to be what your career is going to be at the end of the day. So dance and creating movement was definitely something that was always my main focus.
Did you just say you worked in a bank once?
I did, yeah. I worked at a bank when I was in university, and I would do routines down the hallways. So it was a summer job when I was in college. I'm actually from Toronto, Canada. And I guess I was just saving money so that I could go to New York, because that was always my dream.
And you trained at the Alvin Ailey School. Tell us about that.
I did, yes. Yeah. I trained at the Ailey School and for 3 years. And when I initially moved to New York City, I knew that I wanted to choreograph, so I was building dances. I was creating work in Toronto before I had gotten to New York. But when I got to New York City, the level of dancers was so phenomenal that I wanted to start creating work right away. So even though I was classically trained and I was taking my technique classes, I was definitely choreographing through that whole time period.
And how old were you at this time when you, as you say, moved from Toronto?
In my early 20s. In my early 20s, I moved to New York City.
Early 20s. And you're already creating work. This is something you've already been doing for a while. What inspired you to get started in the first place?
It's just something, what inspired me to get started. I mean, I was making dances in high school. I think sometimes choreographers learn how to choreograph. They start taking composition classes in university, what have you, but I was already drawn to composition at a very, very early age, which isn't really common. My goal really wasn't to perform for a dream dance company. It's always been to choreograph for a dream dance company. So my attachment to storytelling and moving audiences was just really important to me.
And what was the sort of first works like, and the first experiences of creating your own voice and your own narrative and your own works? What was that like for you?
It's interesting. I don't think it has changed that much in regards to storytelling. I think my work isn't abstract. It usually comes very, very truthful experience. So whatever that was happening within my life, my experiences of life is what I would dive into, and that was what would be able to help me manifest movement. And I've kind of carried those same traits, even though as I've gotten older and gotten more exposure. It's really important to me to be emotionally attached to my work when I choreograph, and I've been doing that now, and I was doing that at a very young age.
You mentioned having quite a narrative in terms of your work, but how would you describe your choreographic language or your movement language?
Well, I think it's the process embodies a concept. So if I am doing a work on a certain topic, I will make sure that topic I am emotionally attached to. So I have to be emotionally full, and I have to have the music that kind of carries me before I walk into the studio. And then when I do walk into the studio, the process is really just, I always describe it as painting. So I tend to not walk around with a notebook or a pen. I just begin to let those those feelings kind of come out within a 3 or 4 hour process in rehearsal time, and the movement just begins to flow. I don't necessarily go back on what's been delivered out of my body, because then I start questioning it. And I think it's always important to kind of just honor what has come out truthfully, and that's usually a more successful piece.
And when you're in the studio and you're creating, is it something that you do with the dancers, or do you go into the studio by yourself? How does that work?
No, I do it immediately with the dancers. I do it immediately. When you're getting commissions, you don't always know who's going to be in front of you. And I want to make sure that I also don't push any emotional storytelling or emotional experience on the dancer. I want them to develop that themselves. So really, I spend maybe about 30 minutes to an hour looking at the facility that's in front of me as a mover. And then I begin to immediately start to choreograph and set work on that body. I have not restaged my works, which isn't really common for a lot of choreographers. They usually keep, a piece of work that is in their repertory, that is in the choreographic repertory for a while. And for me, when I work with a new company, I want to make sure that I am really setting work on their dancers. And I think it's just a more enjoyable process for myself and also for the dancers, so that they feel that there's something really organic about the process.
And that must make each of the works for each of those specific companies and for those specific dancers and those bodies and those artists quite unique and special for that company.
Yes, I mean, every dance company is different, and all these bodies are different, and it's just that's really what kind of a choreographic career is about, right? To paint these different stories on these different bodies and see what can evolve. And it just allows the uniqueness of every single dance company to come to the surface.
And how do you, working with the dancers, how do you draw that uniqueness out? How do you get the dancers to sort of engage in that process with you?
I think understanding, I had an acting teacher that always said to watch and observe and understand instincts. And I've carried that through as I rehearse with artists, whether they're actors or singers or dancers. And I think that allows the walls to come down, that allows the vulnerability to kind of not be judged, and allow that that energy exchange to happen within the process. And it's in a comfortable zone. And it goes beyond me just giving an artist movement. It's important for me that I have an understanding of what personality walks into the room as well, because you could have 40 dancers in the room, and you have to kind of honor all of these different and unique characters. And artists in general are sensitive, so you have to have the ability to give the phrase work, but also meet them halfway and understand how they are giving you movement back, how they're understanding what the end goal is, but really getting a good idea of what personality is there.
So let's talk about Other Voices then with the Nashville Ballet.
Yes.
So the artistic director, Paul Vasterling, has set 4 questions I was reading. Those being, what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a woman? What does it mean to be both? And what does it mean to be neither? Mm-hmm. How have you interpreted and responded to these questions that Paul has set?
I was asked what was it to be a woman?
Okay.
And I remember when someone asks you that, you just there's so many responses to that, because there's so many layers to us. So it was definitely something that I had to sit on for a while. It's not something where you're like, okay, got it. We're going to run with this. So we had spoke about it about a year in advance, which allowed me enough time to develop a clear synopsis of what I really wanted to do. But what is a woman is not an easy thing to do in 20 minutes. But because the work is about 20 minutes long. So it's not a difficult, it's a difficult task to kind of attack.
It's almost like the question, like, what is the universe? What is it to be a woman? This is no easy question. And like you say,
yes.
to find an answer that fits into 20 minutes must be an
Yes.
extraordinary
Yes.
experience. How did you come at it? What was your perspective? What did you bring?
Well, I started looking at just the characteristics of what I was on a personal level, and then also just looking at my friends around me and trying to figure out how I really wanted to present the female body on stage. It was important for me to show fearlessness and show bravery, and but I also wanted to show different levels of obedience and different levels of vulnerability. If I was creating duets and trios with men, how do I really start interacting the male body and the female body on stage? And that's kind of where the starting point was when I started to create.
And for this type of program, what does it mean for you as the female creator with this, this question? What does it mean for you as a creator and as a woman and as a person?
Well, can you?
Leah, maybe I need to rephrase that. Like I'm just trying to think about sort of maybe.
I mean, sometimes people always ask, as a female choreographer, do you create differently than a man? And it's not. No, it doesn't. It's not. I don't know what. I don't really approach my work from a strong feminine perspective. I don't know if that's the best way to describe it, but I just kind of, I'm more of, I would prefer to tell and share the integrity of the story of the artist on stage, not necessarily, I don't think my work is any more feminine or any less masculine, or it's just
work.
It's just work. It really is. It's just work.
Yeah, because there is this thing about, the sort of female choreographer.
Yes.
Having to put the female bit first before the choreographer. And
yes.
You're but you are a choreographer. And
yes.
The work speaks for itself, not as you necessarily can't. I guess you can't detach one from the other, but
no,
doesn't make the other necessarily.
No. The work itself speaks for itself. I don't think it's gender specific. What I will say is that I come from a background that has a hip hop background, has a lot of urban aesthetics, and that can be sometimes described very ferocious. And there's like a power behind it, which is the complete opposite of a ballet trained background. So the idea of playing with those two different energies is very clear in my work, and I try to experiment on how they can clash and also how they can kind of fuse together to make something really beautiful.
And how did you get involved in this particular platform with the Nashville Ballet?
I was asked to do an emergence program. And, actually, I think the first recommendation was by Annabella Choa. So she recommended me to Paul Vasterling, and he gave me an opportunity to do a much shorter piece. So I did, I believe I did a 10-minute work with another composer named Christina Spinet from Nashville. And what's exciting about working here in Nashville is that it's such a huge music a musical artist community. So a lot of the works that they do here at the National Ballet are usually integrated with musicians. So I was able to work with a classical pianist composer, and then I did a shorter program, and it was well received. So then they asked me to come back and do this work. So it's at the TPAC. It's on the TPAC stage, so it's not an in-studio showing. And we're also working with the musicians called Lewis York, who are phenomenal. And that was kind of the evolution of it. Generally, when I work with different ballet companies, they ask me to create a smaller work, and if it's well received, then we start getting the opportunities get bigger.
How would you describe the company and the dancers to those who may not have seen them before? What do you think makes the dancers and the company special?
You know what? There's a lot of ballet companies that have levels of hierarchy within it. So you'll have corps de ballet or principals or demi-soloists. And Nashville Ballet does not operate that way. And when you walk into the room, it's an even playing field of all the movers. And that allows for the relationships between them and also between me to almost remain neutral. It's just something that allows the experience to be about the work and nothing else. And that is that's a nice experience, because there's no pressure. There's no pressure. You're really just focused on creating a good work.
Does that affect sort of how you sort of select the dancers for particular, either a solo or duo, or, in terms of, you don't have the principal there and you think, I best use the principal like this, or does that affect how you work at all?
I love the underdog. I always like to put the underdog at the forefront. So I would say no. Sometimes, you're aware of it. Like when you know it's there, you can be influenced by it. Sometimes there's a really clear difference between a principal dancer and a corps, as it should be. Like you're a principal because you have pretty much every skill, like, and it's come together. You're just more seasoned. But I try to not allow that to influence me in casting, because I just want to make sure that the dancer in the room that is able to translate my movement and my vision the best is the person that gets the part.
And I was reading about the Other Voices program, where Paul says, and I sort of read the quote out, "In the mainstream media, we're seeing similar stories being told and retold. We've had the same perspective and experiences brought to life through every artistic medium possible for so long." And he goes on, talking about, this singular voice we often see. I'm interested in sort of what Paul is saying about how, there seems to be often a singular perspective, and the same stories retold. And it's about how do we, as the sort of dance industry, how do we celebrate and encourage differing perspectives and different voices into the industry and into the work and into the companies and to what transpires on stage in terms of the stories that are being told, the types of dancers that we are seeing, the type of work that is being commissioned.
Right.
Yeah.
I think, it's important that artistic directors are taking more risks. There's so many factors that influence the decision of curating, and whether it's box office tickets or a board of directors that expect to see something traditional. We have to push that bar, and we have to do it aggressively, because the world is changing and the ballet world needs to keep up. And we have the dancers, the more seasoned dancers, when they decide to retire, we have a younger generation that want to perform different stories. and you don't want them to get stuck in a rut where they don't want to be a part of ballet anymore. So it's important for artistic directors to take risks in their ideas. And then it's also important for choreographers to say, no, I really want to talk about this. And do you think the audience is ready for this? And sometimes it's not that easy to pitch ideas in the ballet world. And I think that has a huge, because the tradition has had such longevity and success, it's very difficult to kind of put your foot down. But I think I've had many conversations with different artistic directors where they've said to me they think it's time, and it is. Because especially in the climate, what's going on politically, we need to make sure that we are creating art that can have the world really respond to it and understand it and make sure that the world kind of you want an audience to learn something before they walk out of the theater. You want an audience to be able to think about something and think about the images that they've seen and let it resonate. And we don't want to keep seeing the same stories over and over.
Well, you started to answer one of the questions I was going to ask about your piece, in fact. Tell me more about your piece and what it is that you want audiences to take away from your work with the Nashville.
Well, I think lately I've always been trying to play with the power of the female ballerina and what she can do in regards to taking on a male energy in the room. And a huge part of the work is, although it opens up with a vulnerability of staying quiet and being very conservative when the male dancer is approaching her. I have made an emotional arc within the work where the women begin to kind of take ownership and they start taking hold of that fierce and masculine energy and making sure that, you know, they're able to not be the flower in the room and make sure that, you know, they can hold their own and own the stage, and not just in a beautiful, sensual way, but in a ferocious way.
I want to understand sort of that moment when you decided to, you know, create your own company, which I think is fantastic. I love seeing women create their own companies. And I just want to hear more about what inspired you to do this and what your experience was like.
Okay, what I will say about that is that when you're doing commissions for other companies, you are in many times you're coming into a very structured experience. There can be, we need you to, I don't have the word for it, but it's that you have to fit into this box and you need to create this work within this box. So it's a breath of fresh air for me to go back to New York City and work with the dancers that I've been working with over 11 years, who are familiar with what I do stylistically and are also willing to take a chance. And then there's no rules because I can do whatever I want. If I want to do a multimedia piece or if I want to make it I don't have to worry about pleasing a board of directors or just selling tickets, or, you know what I mean? There's definitely a sense of freedom where I can create work and there's no boundaries and I can play. And I also have the time to do it. And because when you're doing commissions, sometimes you have to create these 24-minute works in 2 to 3 weeks. So you start kind of like falling back on different formulas or different, you know, tools that you usually use in order to make sure that you can get through a commission. Whereas when you work with the company, you're able to just play which is important for choreographers.
Have you got a specific moment or work that with your company has been a really important or really special sort of moment for you that you look back over those 11 years that you mentioned?
I did a work called Battlegrounds, and that work was probably the first work that I did that really had a very clear hip-hop aesthetic and a very clear contemporary aesthetic that was like fused. And I had 9 dancers that were presenting that work, and I had hip-hop dancers in the cast, and then I also had contemporary dancers in the cast. And it was something that I had thought about that I was researching for a very long time, but it was inspired by gang members in Papua New Guinea. And I had seen photographs of these gang members in a magazine in New York City, and I had contacted the photographer, and his name was Stephen Dupont. He was from Australia, and I asked him if I could use these photos in order to create work, and he said yes, absolutely. And that was I just felt like there was other artists that were supporting my story, which kind of made you become more attached to the work when you see the investment of another photographer that really wants to see how he is supporting and influencing another artistic. I remember just taking a chance. I had figured out, I went through the photos to figure out who this person was, and then I had found him online, and I emailed him, and I said, "This is my idea," and he said, "Yeah, absolutely." But what was interesting about the story behind those photos is that the gang members did not want to be photographed, so he had to wait in this tunnel, and whoever wanted to come into the tunnel to get photographed, he just sat there for hours. So he went in there, and like one by one, these gang members would come and they would take photographs, but they were these beautiful photographs that just, you could see so much, you could see a whole life within their eyes. And those are the pictures that I wanted to start Battlegrounds about. And it toured in the US. I got an opportunity to present it, and it had a life. Because sometimes you create work when you're not a huge dance company. Sometimes your works they're not seen by many, or it could last 2 days. It could last 2 evenings, and then that's it. So it was nice to put that much time into a piece of work that was able to have its own life for a while.
What do you look for in your dancers?
Well, when I teach class, teaching is very important to me. So my pedagogy definitely requires a very balletic lower body, but this upper body that can manifest a hip hop aesthetic. So the ability to move by impulse and music, and be able to improv and dance with power, and it's really about being able to be as fierce as possible within your gestures, and just be able to kind of, each one of my dancers have to be able to hold their own on stage. And I also think having a background in house, in hip hop, in African is very important than just being classically trained throughout their whole training life. It creates a different dancer. It creates a different mover. And I also think it's important that every dancer that works with me has an ability to act. So if you can't act, then I generally do not cast you in any of my works.
By acting, is this going back to this ability to tell that story that's really important to you? Someone who can really translate that into onto the audience?
Yes, I mean, there's some dancers that move beautifully and they can exude emotion at all. And there's absolutely nothing interesting on stage. And it happens a lot. And I think it's important that more dance conservatories have more acting in their curriculum, because it makes a huge difference when you see a dancer that can own a stage physically and emotionally versus just physically.
Yeah.
I think audiences now are just expecting more. You know, I think an audience is expecting more than just, we've seen the flips, we've seen these huge competitions that are in pop culture now, where we'll see these 2 minutes, we'll see 2 minutes of movement that is fun and great, and it's these spectacular moments, but at some point we need to start asking what else is behind that.
Yeah, particularly with social media, where you get this like split second, of this, spectacular move or, sequence of movements. And then it's like flick for another one and flick for another one and flick for another one. And
Right.
When you go into a theatre, you want more and you need more as an audience.
Right. I mean, I had a younger student come up to me and say, "Do I need a resume? I have an Instagram page." And I was kind of stunned that they had even asked me that, because if we have a younger generation that thinks that Instagram is a reflection of what you can do as an artist, then we have a problem.
My last two questions. What's next for you then, after you have premiered this piece with Nashville Ballet in Other Voices, which is at TPAC's Theatre on Valentine's Day, the 14th of February?
Yes.
What's happening for you after that?
I'm creating, this year I'm going to be creating works for Richmond Ballet, Ballet West, Sacramento Ballet, and Ballet Austin. The Ballet West piece, I have already started working on it. It was actually the first time a company had given me an opportunity where I could come in for a week and play, and then really set the week in May. And what's exciting about Ballet West is they have a national choreographic festival that's happening during that premiere. So there's going to be several companies across the world that are going to be coming to Salt Lake City to perform.
That sounds like quite a busy year for you, 2020.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's a lot of storyboards and concepts that I have to push out. So it's it can get a little bit stressful, especially if I'm creating new works all the time. But yes, fortunately, Cincinnati Ballet is actually restaging a work that's going to be performed. They're going to be performing it in April. So I already have one that I don't have to create. Yes.
And my final question then is, what advice would you give to other choreographers who have, like you, got an interest in running their own company and creating work that shows their own voice?
I never stopped creating work. I think being consistent and showing your work, no matter how big of an opportunity or small of an opportunity is, it's always about creating and exercising that part of your craft. And sometimes choreographers will only choreograph if they have a gig, and that's not always the best way to I don't want to say practice, but also kind of honor your ability to create. Yeah, you always have to. If you really want to be a true creator, I think you should always be creating, and then the work will come.
That is such great advice. Thank you so much for your time. And just a little bit of shout out to the Other Voices, which I mentioned is premiering at TPAC Polk Theatre on Friday, Valentine's Day, 14th of February, through to Sunday, the 16th of February, where you can get your tickets at the Nashville Ballet's website, nashvilleballet.com. And most importantly as well, follow Jennifer on her Instagram page that we mentioned, which is Arc Dance Company at JARCHDANCE. That's it on Instagram.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't forget to subscribe. We've got some incredible interviews coming up with principal ballerinas and renowned choreographers. We love dance and ballet, and we hope you'll love us. Join us on Facebook and Twitter.